Hashtag Carly, Jocelyn, and the cost of moving forward, a Port Charles reckoning. Port Charles has never been gentle with its heroes, and this week it offers no mercy to Carly. What begins as a mother's fury over a secret mission spirals into a reckoning with grief, agency, and the dangerous men orbiting her life. The catalyst is a deceptively simple update. Jason informs Carly that Jocelyn has stepped fully into the clandestine world of the WSB under Brennan's guidance. The words land like shrapnel. Carly hears exploitation, manipulation, risk, and, beneath it all, a fresh assault on the fragile piece she's tried to assemble since Dex was torn out of Jocelyn's future. The reflex is familiar: protect, control, fix. But Port Charles specializes in rendering reflexes useless. As Carly moves from anger to a disquieting understanding, the narrative refracts into something far more complicated than betrayal or approval. It becomes a study of how love tries to direct another person's life, and what happens when that person refuses to be directed. Carly's first instinct is to put Brennan in the crosshairs, not just as a handler but as a thief. In her mind, he stole Jocelyn's vulnerability and converted it into leverage. It is an elegant story, reassuring in its simplicity, because it casts Jocelyn as prey and Carly as savior. Yet the simplicity fractures the moment she truly listens to her daughter. Jocelyn does not sound coerced, she sounds galvanized. She describes the Easter Island cover as if it were a rite of passage, the kind of manufactured adventure that paradoxically reveals something authentic, that she is capable, that purpose does not require permission, that Dex's absence is no longer the only lens through which her life can be understood. It's not that the pain is gone. It's that the pain has a rival. Here lies the problem for Carly. Motherhood taught her to manage danger through proximity, pull loved ones close, keep enemies in sight, outmaneuver threats by sheer will. But Jocelyn's new calling rejects proximity. It demands distance, secrecy, and trust, commodities Carly has historically rationed with a tight fist. Watching Jocelyn alchemize grief into mission is both inspiring and intolerable. Inspiring because the spark in Jocelyn's eyes is unmistakable, intolerable because every ounce of empowerment seems indexed to an increased odds ratio of catastrophe. Carly, who has survived every variety of loss Port Charles can conjure, recognizes the shape of that catastrophe. She can map it in an instant: a missed call, a sealed file, a hospital corridor. The imagination of a survivor is both gift and curse. Brennan's role complicates every calculation. The man occupies a paradox, an architect of peril who, intentionally or not, has unlocked Jocelyn's future. Carly wants a villain clean enough to expel, but Brennan refuses to oblige. He is neither savior nor snake, he is something more volatile, a door. Step through it and there is mission, identity, forward motion. Slam it shut and the house shakes. That ambiguity burrows beneath Carly's skin, because it changes the frame of the argument. The question is no longer, how dare he use my daughter? It becomes, how dare he be necessary? This is where Jason's update, meant to inform, becomes a mirror. Carly's reaction says as much about her unfinished business as it does about Jocelyn's choices. The rawness of her anger exposes the deeper wound, the terror that love can no longer protect the people she loves. That terror is the spine of Port Charles. It makes good people ruthless and principled people reckless. It also explains why Carly keeps reaching for alliances that look strategic on paper and radioactive in practice. Enter Valentine, the self-declared solution to the Brennan problem. His calculus is brutally straightforward: remove Brennan, remove the risk. The flaw is equally straightforward: Brennan is not a single threat but part of a web that now includes Jocelyn's autonomy and sense of purpose. Eliminate the man, and you may collapse the scaffolding Jocelyn is using to move forward. This is the trap Carly begins to perceive when the first blaze of fury burns down into something more analytical. She can feel the ground shifting under her alliance with Valentine. What was once a clean line, Brennan out, safety in, no longer tracks with reality. The map is wrong because the terrain has changed. Carly's emotional pivot is not a softening so much as an evolution from heat to light. She does not suddenly trust Brennan or forgive his methods. But she becomes honest about cause and effect. The mission did not seduce Jocelyn into abandoning herself, it became the vector for her to reclaim herself. The distinction matters. It turns Carly's instincts away from eradication and toward management, a quintessential Carly posture, but with a twist. Instead of trying to steer Jocelyn's life, she begins looking for ways to brace it, guardrails instead of handcuffs. That shift sets up the next conflict like a match held to a fuse. Valentine does not do guardrails. He does removal, and he prefers permanent solutions. Carly's dawning reservations, especially if they are rooted in complicated, unflattering emotions like residual attraction to Brennan, threaten to turn allies into adversaries. Port Charles has taught Carly to hide inconvenient truths behind immaculate strategies, but feeling doesn't stay hidden for long in this town. The more she tries to bury a reluctant admiration for Brennan's effect on Jocelyn, or her own unresolved affection for the man himself, the more the narrative conspires to excavate it. And it does so with cruel efficiency. Imagine a retaliation in Valentine's signature style, precise, deniable, devastating, that sends Brennan to the threshold between living and leaving. Hospitals in Port Charles are cathedrals of clarity. People arrive there in pieces, and what they truly believe assembles itself in the waiting rooms. Carly at Brennan's bedside is not a romantic tableau, it is a thesis defense. The thesis is this: we are not finished with each other. Not because fate commands it, but because the fracture lines between us still shape the ground we walk. The tears are not absolution. They are data. If Brennan opens his eyes, he will find a woman whose anger has transformed into something steadier, not trust, not surrender, but acknowledgement. Acknowledgement that his presence in Jocelyn's story has not been purely corrosive, that sometimes the hand that pulls you into the fire also teaches you how to walk through it. This is a bitter pill for a mother who has built her identity on being the shield. But growth in Port Charles rarely tastes sweet. It tastes like metal. None of this absolves the danger. Carly is not naive. The WSB is a machine that grinds down the very people it declares essential. Missions come with blacked-out paragraphs and debts that mature at the worst possible time. Jocelyn's path will demand sacrifices that a parent cannot pre-authorize. But empowerment has its own logic. Once you know you can serve a cause larger than your grief, it is almost impossible to retreat into safety labeled with someone else's name. Carly, who has lived that truth on battlefields both domestic and international, cannot deny it to her daughter without tearing something honest out of her own history. The partnership with Valentine, then, becomes a test of whether Carly wants victory or wisdom. Victory would be a quick strike, a story with an ending, Brennan neutralized, Jocelyn protected, chapter closed. Wisdom accepts mess, Brennan monitored rather than erased, Jocelyn trained and supported rather than sheltered, Valentine held at a distance before his solutions turn into collateral damage. Wisdom is harder to sell. It presents poorly, indecision masquerading as strategy, sentiment masquerading as prudence. But it is the only approach that recognizes everyone's motives and the way those motives intersect. The emotional engine of the story is not an impossible choice between mother and daughter, love and safety, action and restraint. It is the revelation that the choice was never binary. Carly can be furious with Brennan's methods and still concede that he opened a door Jocelyn needed. She can value the lethal competence Valentine brings to a crisis and still refuse to let him dictate terms that flatten Jocelyn's autonomy. She can ache for Dex and yet refuse to let that ache become a trap for her daughter. In other words, Carly can evolve. Jason's presence is a quiet counterpoint throughout. He is both messenger and measure, a man who has long understood what it means to live inside risk and still build a code around it. By telling Carly the truth, he forces her to stop fighting the ghost of the daughter she once protected and face the woman standing in front of her. That is Jason's gift, not comfort, but clarity. It never arrives at a convenient hour. What, then, is the cost of moving forward? For Jocelyn, it is the acceptance that meaning and danger are fraternal twins. For Carly, it is the surrender of a story in which vigilance alone can redeem the past. For Brennan, it may be the knowledge that enabling someone's destiny does not guarantee a place in it. For Valentine, the cost is discovering that not every problem in Port Charles can be solved with a disappearing act. The arc bends toward a new kind of alliance, one organized around boundaries instead of vendettas. Carly can still play Brennan if that is what safety requires, but the game now includes rules that serve Jocelyn's voice. She can still enlist Valentine when the city demands a scalpel, but she no longer pretends the scalpel is a spoon. She can still rage at the universe for taking Dex and handing Jocelyn a life that looks like a series of edges, but she stops mistaking edges for endings. When the next body falls or the next file surfaces or the next mission calls at midnight, none of this will feel easy. Courage rarely does. Yet something crucial has shifted. The woman who stormed into this story believing she could shut a door to save her family steps out of it ready to learn how to walk with them through open thresholds. She will still bark orders and make impossible deals and cry in elevators. She is Carly. But the map she carries now includes the parts of Port Charles where children rewrite the logic of their parents' fear. If that is not safety, it is at least truth. And in this town, truth is the only armor that doesn't rust. In the weeks ahead, the fallout from this recalibration promises more than a simple victory lap. Valentine will not appreciate being demoted from executioner to consultant, and men like him do not accept demotions without creating work for the hospital staff. Brennan, if he survives the latest strike against him, will have to decide whether he wants to be a mentor in practice or merely in myth. Jocelyn's competence will invite tests designed to strip it away. Jason will keep telling the kind of truths that make family dinners difficult. And Carly, caught between love and leadership, will keep choosing, then choosing again, not because she is fickle but because the world keeps changing beneath her feet. General Hospital thrives on this kind of moral motion. The show's great trick is to convert melodrama into meditation, not whether a bullet flies, but what the bullet reveals about the people who dodge it. This chapter belongs to a mother who learns that saving someone and seeing them are not the same act, and that sometimes, the most radical form of protection is the courage to recognize the person in front of you has already chosen who they intend to be. There will be more ambushes and more bedside vigils. There will be nights when Carly begs the universe to give her a crisis she can win with muscle and money. But the story's heartbeat has shifted. It no longer pounds with the rhythm of pursuit and escape. It pulses with the quieter, steadier tempo of acceptance, and the fierce, flawed, deeply human love that makes acceptance possible. In Port Charles, that is the bravest mission of all.